Good day. My name is Dr. Crystal Tribitz, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Lolita Brown Fletcher for In Our Words, the UCI Black Alumni Oral History Project. Today is Wednesday, October 20th. Thank you for speaking with me today, Lolita.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing this. What a wonderful project.
I'm so excited to speak with you and hear more about your story. So I'm going to start off with some really easy questions, kind of background questions, because I'm really interested in knowing about your life leading up to UCI. So can you describe for me your background? Where are you from, and what was life like for you growing up?
Sure. So I'll start with my parents. Both of my parents are from New Orleans, Louisiana. And so we are Creole, French, Spanish, and Black. And I grew up in South Central Los Angeles until I was in about the 7th grade. Then we moved to Inglewood. And so the remainder of my school years were in Inglewood. I went to Morningside High School. And interesting enough, while I was in high school, there was a woman who was in a PhD program in fine arts from UC Irvine, came to our school and saw our dance program and saw me dancing as a senior and invited me to UCI. But, and so that was an introduction to UCI. But heading back to my childhood, I will share with you, I have a huge family. I have 5 brothers and 5 sisters. You know, some from only mom, some from only dad, some, there are 5 of us in common with the same mom and dad. You know, we struggled at times. My mom ended up being a single mom. And so sometimes things were tough for us, but we made it through with a lot of love, a lot of support. I am first generation college, you know, individual, and that came with a lot of responsibility. Going to Irvine meant I could not fail in my mind. And so that was a pretty strong motivator for me. Coming from my background at Morningside High School, although there have been many from 1980 when I graduated to succeed, everything was not in place for us to succeed. So we succeeded out of sheer determination. But, you know, had a great childhood, a lot of fun, a lot of love.
Thank you for sharing that. What were your parents' names?
What were their names?
Yeah, what are their names?
Oh, very cool. My dad's name was Wellington Brown, and my mother was Carmita Deku Brown. And when she passed away, she was Willis.
Thank you for sharing. So what was the message you received from your family or from school about education?
While no one else had gone to college before, it was for me to do that. So I was, of my mother's children, I was second to youngest. And my older sisters and brothers invested a lot of time and energy in making sure the 2 of us that were the younger ones kind of stayed on the straight and narrow and actually went to college. And they always told me that they actually wanted me to be the role model for their children. And so that's how life proceeded, being a role model for others. They always said, be a doctor or be a lawyer, despite the fact that there weren't many that I knew, not many that I saw in our community, yet that was what was sticking in my head. Be a doctor or be a lawyer. And so I ended up being a lawyer.
Did you know that you wanted to be a lawyer when you were in high school?
By the time I got to high school, I was thinking about being a lawyer. Um, Early on, I thought, I always had law in my mind for some reason. And so I can remember speaking at an elementary school graduation saying I wanted to be a legal secretary. And by the time I was speaking at my junior high school uh, graduation, I remember um, I wanted to be, and so it just kept going up. I was then talking, in terms of paralegal work. And then somewhere in high school, oh no, I'm going to be an attorney. And so I just continued to focus on that profession.
So you mentioned that you actually had an interaction with someone from UCI.
Yeah.
And was that can you tell me more about that interaction? Do you remember the person's name?
I remember her first name. It was Deborah. And she had graduated from my high school. And we had a wonderful dance teacher, Betty White. And so students would come back to visit her, when they were either in town or for special events. And this woman, Deborah, came to our school at a time when we were practicing for a dance show. And I think it was it was something in the fall. I don't remember the program, but she saw a dance that I did with a partner and decided that she wanted to ask us to participate in her PhD presentation or something. So she had to put on a dance production and we became a part of it. So I was able to dance at UCI as a senior in high school. And, of course, I was thrilled. My partner was thrilled. Family and parents and, a whole crew came down to UCI to see this performance. And I just remember it being a great experience. I then, instead of being recruited as somebody in academics, the dance department sought me as a dance major. And I did not become a dance major. I continued with my political science major, but I did take some dance classes while I was at UCI. And so that was really fun. But that was the personal touch for UCI. UCI was on my radar because I wanted to go to a UC school. I wanted to stay close enough to home that I was connected to my family, but I wanted to leave LA. So I didn't apply to UCLA, unlike everybody else seems to, UCLA, UCLA. I didn't apply to UCLA because it was home. And I knew I wanted to go at least a little bit of ways from home. So, but yeah, it was a great personal touch and it made me fall in love with UCI.
So you applied to UCI. Did you apply to other schools as well?
I did, just a few though. I think maybe 3 schools. And that was it. Once I got into UCI, I knew I was coming or going there, and it was a done deal.
And you started UCI what year?
In 1980.
What was your first impression of the campus once you got to see it for yourself?
First impression was this is a very beautiful place. Even, as far back as 1980, it was just a gorgeous campus. And it still is, it just is beautiful. For me, socially, stepping foot on campus, it felt big because, I had no experience with a large place like that before. It was a culture shock because despite being as light-skinned as I am, I'm still a Black woman. And I still, was raised in a Black community. And so going to UCI, it was Okay, I've never seen this many white people before. And it was just a culture shock. Yeah. But one that I was ready for, I just said, whatever I find, I'm going to take on and I'm going to tackle and I'm going to succeed. So.
Do you, maybe you don't remember the numbers, maybe you do, but do you remember kind of what the demographics of the student population was at that time?
I really don't remember, but what I do, somehow it seemed like there was talk of there being 300 of us on campus. And that meant undergrad, grad, amongst all the majors. And so you had to go and purposefully be in a place where you could be surrounded by others. And so we did. The Cross-Cultural Center was that place for us at that time. I made the mistake, and I'll call it a mistake, of kind of being grown and living off campus in my first year. And, it then made it more difficult to find community and relate to the campus. So I had to make an effort to get to know people on campus and belong. I had a roommate who also graduated from my high school. She was our salutatorian at Morningside. And so we just got together and said, the heck with the dorms. We're not going to live in the dorms. We're going to get us an apartment. It wasn't until I had that apartment did I have my first bedroom to myself. So up until that point, I'd always shared a bedroom with someone. In my later high school years, it was my brother. We always shared a bedroom. And so I think she had the same experience. And we just said, no, we're going to bypass that. I had no idea how we was really going to fund all of this and do all of these things. We just did it. And as a result, I had to really make an effort to belong to UCI, find clubs, find people. And it took a little while, but I found my crew.
So earlier you mentioned there were about 300 of us, and by us you're referring to Black African-American students.
Yes.
And you mentioned you lived off campus. Was that starting freshman year? So as soon as you got to UCI, you were already living off campus?
Already living off campus in the Park West apartments.
And so, where were the Park West apartments?
They're still there on Culver and Michelson. A huge complex, and me and my roommate Darlene Wilson lived there for 4 complete years. Later, in our last 2 years, we added a roommate. That was Tisa Holland Shavers. Hopefully she'll be interviewed. But I ended up across the parking lot from women who ultimately became my sorority sisters, and learned that there were a lot of Black folks over in Park West. And so a lot of them became friends.
Was that a common thing for students that time in the 80s to live off campus?
It was not. Not in your first year. And so, as a junior or a senior in college, of course, everyone wanted to move off campus, find your friends and go and have roommates off campus. That was a grown thing to do, I'm beyond dorm room, but not as a freshman. Most everyone that I knew only did that, sophomore, junior, senior year, not as a freshman. And so that would be one of the things that I would do differently. And so over the years, when I speak to students, high school students and younger students in college, I make sure they know No, it's important to live on campus for at least that 1 year so that you make those connections and you become intimately familiar with the campus and its resources. You don't find out a lot of things living off campus, or it takes a lot more effort.
How you mentioned you did find your friends, your social circle. Can you tell me about that process? How did you do that? How did you become involved on campus and get to know it?
Yeah, so I think I started to make friends in the Black community almost immediately. SPOP. And so what is that? The Student Parent Orientation Program. That was the first opportunity to start making friends. And I remember being at a SPOP dance. So on, I think the last night of that orientation program, they have a party. And, one thing that is particular to cultures is more so than now, because, I think now we listen to all kinds of genres, but growing up, something happened. Growing up, I listened to what, my mother and older sisters had in our home, which was blues, rhythm and blues, and soul music. And so that's what I grew up on. Now, I had a brother-in-law that would sit me down and make me listen to rock music and other music. And so that was some introduction to me, for me, to what I would hear when I went to Irvine. And so I was at this dance, and it was music that was otherwise unfamiliar to me. Had I not had a brother-in-law who introduced me to some rock music. Well, that's not what I would have been dancing to at a dance at Morningside or a family party. And so I was just kind of standing around thinking, oh, this is a different kind of party. And then a song came on, and I lit up, and another woman lit up, and we said, hey! And that was the beginning of a lifelong friendship. We immediately said, who else relates to that song? And we went and found each other in the middle of a dance floor and said, oh, where are you from? Turns out she was from Inglewood and had gone to St. Mary's High School, which is right up the street from Morningside, gone to high school with my cousin, and we became friends. And she and I are still best friends today. We've raised our daughters together, and so that was you just meet out, right? And so that was how things happened. The other thing that was significant for me was in the 12th grade, I had a chemistry teacher who gave me an application to apply to a scholarship from Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority. And I applied and I got the scholarship. And as part of that interview process, the women, and there were probably maybe 7 or 8 of them interviewing me, and said, yeah, you may be a big deal at Morningside, but how are you going to, little Lolita become a big deal at UC Irvine? And I just said, well, I don't know for sure, but my plan will be to get involved, to become a leader, and to make myself known, and to help and support those who come behind me. And so they, of course, a part of that interview, they said, well, look, we have a chapter there. And when you get there, we want you to find Alpha Kappa Alpha women. And so I was on a mission from day one to find Alpha Kappa Alpha women. And so that left me very, targeted, looking for a group. when it came to sorority fraternity life. And so while I heard of all of these other groups, I had already had that set in my mind. And so I did very minimally look at other organizations when it comes to fraternity sorority life. But I had it set on my mind that I would find the women who gave me a scholarship and who belonged to that organization. And so I sought them out, and it turned out that they were some of the significant leaders on campus. And so that then made that choice easier, because they were doing things that I would want to be doing, and they were in positions that I admired. And so I got to know them. And in my second year at UC Irvine, I joined Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority. And so that gave me a sisterhood to belong to. And, you know, that again put me on a path with a group of Black women. I belonged to and worked in the counseling center. I worked in a career center as well. I worked as a peer counselor and a women's peer counselor. So the training that I did to become a women's peer counselor was significant, and has been a part of my life. You know, that's some training that has helped me in everything that I've ever done ever since. But that put me in touch with women at large. And then as part of that group, we pulled some of the Black counselors, so young students who were learning to be counselors, and we created an organization called the Black Women Support Group. And so while we did counseling for women in the counseling center, we also made sure that we did separate counseling for Black women as well. And so that was cool. But that became my community, my sorority, later the BSU. I reached out and ultimately became one of the officers in BSU in my junior year. And that was my community. And the community cannot be understated, because it's what connects you to a place. And it can be, for someone who is on the edge, what keeps you at a place. And so, you know, you just can't understate how important it is to connect with people who you feel care about you and have your back.
You were a very busy student.
I was very
with
busy.
all of these things.
I worked every year in college, anywhere from 10 hours a week to, at one point, 40 hours a week. And I always maintained a full-time schedule. And I always maintained a heavy social calendar. So I was always active in some organization or volunteering. I did a lot while I was there. My only experience living in the dorm was when I was an RA for SEOP. So I didn't come in through SEOP, the special summer program, but I did work that program one summer. And
Is that the Summer Educational Opportunities Program?
Yes. And so I didn't come in through that program, but I learned that there were a lot of people who connected in that program, learned all about UCI in advance. And again, I didn't get that. And then living off campus, I didn't have that. So that was one of the programs that I wanted to belong to. And so I got the opportunity to do it by being, a student worker. And so I actually lived in the dorms for one summer with the SEOP students. And some of them I am still friends with today.
I'd love to go back for just a second and talk a little bit more about your work as a peer counselor and the founding of the Black Women Support Group.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about what were some of the women's issues that you were, very broadly, no names or anything like that, just what were some of the issues and concerns that students were bringing to you all at that time? It was the 80s, right? So, how did you all try to address those concerns?
Yeah, so this program was a women's peer counseling program, and it was a training, and we trained for 3 quarters. And I think after that first quarter, or maybe like 5 weeks into that first quarter, we had enough under our belt where they allowed us to start counseling women. And so we would sit in the women's center or the women's counseling center, and women who wanted to talk to women instead of just going over to the regular counseling center would come and talk to us. And the issues were, and I want to give credit to and share about the woman who headed up this group. It was Rita Whiteley. She was a PhD, and she was the wife of, I believe, like a vice chancellor. And they were a prominent couple on campus, but she was just really warm and inviting, and made me and others feel at home in becoming a counselor. One of the things that we did, which made this group so wonderful, is that we counseled each other. And so to learn how to become a counselor, we were counseled in some of the issues that we had. And so as we sat around the table and strengthened our skills, and listening and helping people through their issues and bringing things out, we had to raise our own issues. And so the kinds of things that were raised in our sessions, our training sessions, as well as the kinds of issues that women brought to us were sometimes sexual assault, relationship issues, parental issues, financial issues, sexual identity issues. I then was learning about that and learning to accept others, and had to learn how to provide counseling to individuals who were grappling with, hey, I'm at college for the first time and I feel like I want to identify like this, and I want sexually to be this. And as a result, we had to learn how to counsel them. And you might be unfamiliar with an area, but you need to become familiar with it in order to assist someone. And so we did. We studied all those issues, learned how to counsel women on those issues, and it was, again, a very rewarding experience. And it gave us the strength and the know-how to go and provide the same kind of counseling for Black women. And so what we did, we created the support group, and we would meet every 2 weeks, and we found a Black female counselor, Sandy, who is now Sandy Rowe, to lead us and to guide us and to train us. But mostly what this group was a support group. And so we come together every 2 weeks and just talk about our issues. And, there was a lot of overlap in the kinds of things that we shared: financial concerns, relationship concerns, what was going on at home with families and parents, academics, of course. But we would just sit and support each other through whatever it was. And we promised that it would be a safe place. So this wasn't something that, well, you come and share something that could be intimately sensitive for you, and then we're going to go and gossip about it somewhere else. That was off limits. This was safe, and it also was a place where you didn't have to belong to this sorority or that sorority. that was a place where we all came together as women, and it didn't matter, what sorority you belonged to, but all bets were off. We were all Black women when we sat in there, and we supported each other. We uplifted each other, and no divisions. There's no walls in here, and it was great. It was absolutely wonderful.
Do you happen to know, when that program started? Did it started with your class, and what was the kind of the future of it? How long did it last?
So we did it for somewhere between 1.5 to 2 years, and I don't know what happened to it after I left. I do know there was one woman who tried to keep it going after I graduated, but I think a large group of us had been that junior, senior status. And so we all moved on, and it didn't seem to, maybe we didn't put a good, some succession planning in place so that it would continue. And so I think it sort of lasted another year, but maybe it didn't have the support and kind of petered out after a while. But I remember there was someone from our core group that was around that following year, and I don't know how long it went on beyond that. But it's not a bad idea for something like that to start up again. Yeah.
You've covered so many great topics in regards to things that you were involved in leadership roles or had an opportunity to experience, like your sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha. Were there other events and activities that you can recall that were you have kind of really fond memories of?
Being a natural born dancer, and I remember our parties, our dances. And so, of course, the sororities and fraternities took turns having dances. There weren't enough of us that we could have competing events. So we coordinated, okay, this month you can have the dance, next month someone else would have the dance. We had a lot of fun at those parties. I remember in BSU when we had, and I don't think it was the first, maybe like the second or third march on Irvine. And so on Martin Luther King Day, we marched from the park there all the way to campus, and then had a little forum where we did speeches. That was a very cool, memorable time. I remember the hot links that we used to sell. We'd take turns selling hot links at what we called Wade's Goose. They don't have Wade's Goose anymore. It's something else now.
It's Celebrate UCI.
Right. What else? We had, again, in sorority fraternity life, we had what we called high noon. And so on Fridays, somewhere between 12 and 4 in the afternoon, the sororities and fraternities would bring their pledges out. And, you can't do that stuff anymore. There are a lot of rules and regulations that prevent it now, but we would stand in a line and recite, different things and perform. And that was a lot of fun. What else? I'm trying to think of some other things.
When was that first, you said that you called it the March on Irvine, as part of the Martin Luther King holiday? Do you know?
Yes. So it was Martin Luther King holiday. It was 1983. And it seemed like there may have been one before, but that year I think I was co-chair of BSU. And
that's the Black Student Union that you're mentioning.
Yes, I feel like I was co-chair twice, once with Daphne Benson and once with Louis Butler. but I remember both of those years. So that would have been my senior year and my junior year. We did that. And that was a big deal. That was a big deal. Just to bring awareness. And, at the time, we still had Arizona not recognizing King as a holiday, MLK Day. It's like, come on, so we made a big deal out of that. And just, it was a day where we acknowledged certainly what he meant to the Black community, but we raised other significant Black figures so that we could educate the population at large on, our contributions to our country.
Was that in cooperation with the Cross Cultural Center? I believe in recent years, and maybe not so recent, but even in past years, the Cross Cultural Center has taken a lead with acknowledging the Martin Luther King holiday and figures on campus. Was that similar during the time that you were discussing?
Yeah. Now remember, we weren't in that new building. We were in a whole separate place. And
where were you?
Lori White was over the Cross Cultural Center at that time. That's Dr. Joe White's daughter.
Yeah. And where was the cross at that time?
It was over by Humanities. And it was just a trailer. It was a trailer that's set over there, but all the organizations were housed there, and that's kind of where we hung out. They had a big living room, and we hung out there. Very familiar place.
We've spent lots of time on social life, and I wanted to be sure, was there anything else about social life, especially regarding the Black community, that you wanted to talk about before I switch over to academics?
No, I think I've covered a lot of that. Some of the staff and faculty were significant to us. While I never took a class with Dr. Joe White, he was still significant in the 4 years that I was there, because he would speak, and we'd make sure that we'd go to whatever he was doing. He would come speak to maybe the BSU or speak at Black History Month events. And so he was still very significant, even when you didn't take one of his courses. And just, I remember, Darryl Rowe. Darryl Rowe was a counselor on campus, but his role and his mentorship just meant so much to us. So we were always interested in bringing them to speak to us at BSU events and other, functions. If say they were having a function, we made sure that we supported them. It was critical to have those role models and mentors. And I think that was real significant for us.
Were there other individuals that you can recall that were significant? So we have Dr. White, you mentioned Lori White, any others?
Gosh, there was a woman, and she recently passed away, and I'm forgetting her name. Yeah, I can't remember her name, but she was just a wonderful figure, mentor, speaker, always motivating us and, putting us on the right path when we needed to be put on the right path.
Do you know which department she was associated with?
I think fine arts, or maybe humanities. I don't know.
That's okay.
Gosh, there'll be someone else who will speak about her. I know they will, because she was incredible, and she probably died within like the past 2 years. That's another thing that's so good about this, because we're losing some of our alumni, and to just document, their stories is so incredible. So the work that you're doing is just invaluable. Who else? Daisy over in financial aid. She, was always assisting us. The woman in housing, Lisa.
Lisa Cornish?
Yes, she was there as far back as the 80s. So she's just a staple. But she was significant. When you had issues, she was someone that you could go to, and she was going to give you the real deal. If she could help you, she would. If she couldn't, she'd set you on the right path or refer you to someone who could. But those folks were critical.
Thinking about academics, you majored in political science, is that right?
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about your experience as a major, and what do you recall about the classes and the teachers, and what really helped set you up for graduation and beyond UCI?
Yes. So it wasn't a done deal when I went there. In my first year, and I had gone through high school in honors courses, and thinking, you're a smart kid, you can just go to college and succeed. Well, all bets were off when you got to UCI, because it was a challenging curriculum. And, you really had to be disciplined and ready to succeed at a different level than I had ever known. And again, I didn't know people who had gone to college personally. And so I had nowhere to turn but to UCI. So I needed to find my success there. I was having such trouble in my writing course that my professor thought I was an English, a Spanish speaker. I guess he looked at my name as Lolita, which is Spanish, and thought maybe, English is her second language. Well, it was, but it wasn't because I was speaking Spanish. It was because I was speaking from the neighborhood. And he said, I don't think you're going to be able to pass this class. Maybe you need to get some extra tutoring. And I told him, not passing this class is not an option. So I cannot go back home in December and tell my family that I came to Irvine and I failed. And so he said, well, here's what you need to do. You can't have these 5 errors in your papers. This is how you're getting marks off. And I then decided, okay, numerous people would read every single essay that I wrote in order to, have enough eyes on it so that they were editing my work. Because it, and even now, as a 30-year attorney, it's very easy to resort to speaking very comfortable and very, what we called as kids, your country, and so I can become comfortable, but when you put it on paper, this professor needed to not see, run-on sentences and, all of these errors, verb, noun, agreement problems, right? So I had just numerous people read my essays before I turned them in, because he told me, I don't think you're going to pass this class. Like, well, that's not going to work for me. I got to pass. And so that's what got me through that writing class. And it let me know that, okay, you are different. You're going to need some additional help. And so while, yes, you want to be in all of these organizations and you want to be a leader on campus, none of that will be possible if you don't maintain your academics. So my philosophy in life started at UC Irvine, and it was work hard, play hard. And so I worked hard first, in order to be able to play hard. And so I realized that academics didn't come easy for me. And so I studied a lot. And so my whole life was Irvine. It was, study, 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 study some more, and then, give back and have some fun, partying and being social. So it took a lot for me to maintain just a B average. And I pulled it off. I pulled it off somehow. I didn't find political science that interesting. I really would have preferred to probably be in something like psychology or, something else, but that's all I knew. And people told me, oh, if you want to be an attorney, you should study politics. Or, and what they should have told me was study English. That would have been a much better, because you're going to write a lot as an attorney. But I made it through. And again, it wasn't easy. I was just it was sheer determination that got me through, and a lot of study. And so I studied really, really hard to get sometimes just to see, and so I was thrilled when I made A's, and somehow I came out of there with, maybe a 3.1 or 3.2 GPA, and it was enough to study really hard to do well on an LSAT to get me into law school. But it didn't come easy for me. And I didn't find the counseling particularized for my community. Oh, you're on mute, Krista.
I'm nodding and saying, okay.
Yeah.
Waiting to hear more about this. What do you mean? What would you have liked to see?
Well, sometimes they would, counsel you, like peer counselors would tell you, oh yeah, go take this course, this course, this course, and this course. Mm-hmm. Well, what was best for me is to take just 3 at a time, no more than 4. But there were times when, you'd be advised, oh, you need this and this and this and this. No, coming from where I came from and having to study as hard as I had to study, I needed 3 courses at a time. That was the way I was going to succeed. And so I never took more than 4 courses. And usually I took 3. If there were 2 tough classes, then I needed, one that was not so tough. And that's what got me through. And I had to figure that out. But I did it. And, no real bad experiences, just had to I'd had to learn who I was and how I studied and what worked for me.
Because my next question would be something like, what were some of those, the challenges that you faced at UCI and how you overcame them?
Well, finances was always a challenge. Even though, because I qualified for financial aid, I didn't graduate with a lot of debt. I still had to work because that was not enough to sustain me. So I always worked. Sometimes it was 10 hours a week. And like I said, I remember one quarter, because finances were so bad that I literally worked 35 to 40 hours a week. And so it was critical for me to know that if I had to work because finances were so low, that then I needed to have a lighter academic schedule. And so I tried to plan those things out. But no one gave me that advice. And I wish I had someone giving me that advice. But that was a challenge. The other challenge is being a part of a family that doesn't understand academic success and not knowing what it takes to be committed to your studies. And so, there'll be family events and things going on at home that you either feel obligated to go to or wanted to be a part of, and that would take away from your studies. And then I had emergencies that occurred in my family. Every single year was something, and it pulls you away, and it makes school that much more difficult. I had a sister-in-law my first year that had gone to Mississippi to visit family and had a horrible traffic accident, and we almost lost her. Well, that was devastating. And so it was real critical to be able to move beyond something that devastating. Then my second year, I had my sister, we almost lost her during childbirth. Well, that would have been devastating. But for those weeks when, she was going through that and recovering, again, as a young woman trying to focus on school, that balance is thrown off when emotionally you're somewhere else and you want to be home, you want to be there with the family. Those were the challenges of just staying focused and staying the course, and not, 3 weeks out of your schedule in a 10-week quarter can literally cause you to fail. So it was very, challenging to give family some time when those emergencies occurred, yet stay focused on school. And so I found that very challenging. And so still now, I make sure families know when your kid is in school, they need to focus on school. Make sure that if you can, keep those family emergencies to a minimum, because they interfere with the focus that you need for academics. But those were the challenges.
Lolita, how did your experience at UCI affect your life, but shape your years after college?
I think it shaped everything. Everything that I did after was shaped by those 4 years at UCI. First and foremost, the lifelong friends that I have. 3 of my very best friends are friends from UC Irvine. And again, we experienced marriage, divorce, death of our parents, the raising of our kids, birthdays, anniversaries, reunions at UCI. We've experienced everything together. And so, my lifelong friends come from UCI. And academically, I am grateful to have gone to such a strong school, such a highly respected school, and that it continues to be that today. It did give me a strong enough foundation to succeed in law school and to have a lifelong career as an attorney. I'm now a professor of law. I teach employment discrimination. I teach special education law and an advocacy clinic. But the whole foundation is everything that I gained from UC Irvine. It took a shaky academic foundation and strengthened it. And it still needed to be strengthened further, because 4 years, is not enough to write, a shaky academic foundation as a child, but it put me on the right path. And I love it for that. And it's why I continue to serve today, UCI, and everything that I do involves service so that I can give back, because I'm grateful for everything that I got from UC Irvine, from my sorority, from the Black community, from those who care enough to give back. And so I do as well.
And you currently serve as a member of the Black Alumni chapter. Yeah.
I do. I'm one of the founders of the Black Alumni chapter, and I've been on the board for a while now. So I am working on that succession plan. As we speak, we are pulling younger members onto our board so that one day they will take over and we do not have to continue, but in an advisory capacity, you know. But yes, I do that, and I'm also a board member. I'm legal counsel for the African American. Wow.
Alumni Council Board.
Alumni Council. Yes. And so that's a 501c3. And so we do fundraising in order to strictly give out scholarships. And so for now 8 years or so, we have given 10 scholarships a year, $1,000 scholarships to Black students. And so it's a wonderful thing. What else? I continue to be active in my sorority as a graduate. And again, we give scholarships and we, just do service. If you're a person that wants to give, you can give as an individual, but when you become a part of a larger organization, your service is just magnified. And so that's what I find that's so beneficial about being a member of a sorority is that, our focus can be magnified throughout the entire country and throughout the world because we're all focusing on, providing service. And I still do it. I love it. My daughter also graduated from UCI Irvine. And
what's your daughter's name?
Kristen Fletcher. And so she graduated as a political science major and went to law school there and graduated from law school and is now a practicing attorney and a board member. So she's going to be a part of that succession planning that I'm talking about. So what else can I share with you? I think that's about it on that topic.
I have just 2 more questions for you. There's a lot of conversation initiatives currently around ways to support the Black community at UCI, the students, the faculty, the staff. How can we provide an environment where the community can thrive? So I'm hoping you can offer some reflections on thriving at UCI and the legacy of your class, what your legacy of your class has been here at UCI.
Let me first start with something that's a problem. The problem is we've got to get more of us there. And while UCI has had its waves of bringing in more, it's going to continue to be something that we need to put at the forefront of our mind, of our concerns, of our discrepancies with the university. Until they bring in more, we've got to speak out about this. And I think universities do what they want to do. And when they make this a priority, then we will be more substantial in numbers on our campus. And so that's a problem that continues. And it's sad that, I was there in the 80s, and this is still the same issue that we're speaking about. So that we need to continue to push and advocate for more of us at the university. And that starts with faculty and staff at all levels, and then increasing the number of students as well. We will be stronger if there are more of us there, there's more support, there's more community, And so, I can't say that enough. Now, how do we thrive? We thrive by supporting each other. And when I'm speaking to students and serving as a mentor to students, I'm always trying to let them know, yes, it's important to have our differences, but we've got to find the common ground as well. We are stronger when we are together. And recognizing that we're all not, we're not a monolithic group as some would like to have us. We have different opinions. We have differences in likes and dislikes, but we need to stand as one on something. And that comes in the strength of our community. So I just say, find people who support you, who uplift you, find what works for you, and know that there are strong alumni at this university who have come before you. And I think of one of our alumni who has, passed away, William Carroll Tambuzi. He brought in a lot of the African Americans who were there during my time frame because he was a recruiter. He went out to the South Central LA schools and brought us there in numbers. And so a lot of the people who were there during my era were brought in because he recruited them. And, we need more people like that. But I say all of that to say we have some memorable alumni. We have people in every field. We have doctors, lawyers, of course. We have PhDs in education and African American studies. We have people doing some significant things. Dentists, teachers in all fields, significant business leaders, some innovators, and we are a strong alumni. We have, again, people in every field. And so our students should be looking to us to help pave the way for them, to help pull them into internships and jobs, because it's going to always be your foundation plus being in the right place and knowing the right people. That's how those opportunities can come about for you. And so our legacy is strong, and I want to see it continue, and I want to see it continue in greater numbers.
If you can describe your UCI experience in 3 words, what would those 3 words be?
Oh boy, 3 words. Fun, challenging, and memorable.
Thank you so much, Lolita. Is there anything that you wanted to finish with that we didn't cover?
I can't think of anything else. I would like to say thank you for the great work that you're doing. And this is, while it's a part of your work that you do for the university, this is community service as well. This is giving back. This is everything, because if we don't document our history, it could be lost. And so I just want to say thank you.
You are very welcome. It has been an absolute pleasure learning a little bit more about you. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you so much.